I'm doing you a favor, Emma. Sarah's voice oozed with artificial sympathy through my phone's speaker. You can't possibly manage that big house while you're sick. Besides, we've already moved in. The kids love it here. My fingers tightened around the cold metal railing of my hospital bed, my knuckles whitening as I fought to steady my trembling hands. 3 weeks of chemotherapy had left me exhausted, but nothing could have prepared me for this. Sarah, I said, forcing my voice to remain calm despite the fire burning in my chest, you can't just move into my house without permission. Oh, but I did, she laughed, the sound sharp and grating. And honestly, the place needed a woman's touch. Those dreary old paintings of your mother's? I put them in the garage with the rest of the junk. My mother's paintings, the ones she had poured her soul into during her final years, each brushstroke a piece of her heart left behind for me. The house had been her last gift, a sanctuary she'd had chosen knowing I would need a place to heal after she was gone. Don't touch those paintings, I warned, my voice steel beneath the softness. But Sarah barely paused. Listen, Emma, you need to face reality. You're sick. You can barely take care of yourself. James and I are doing you a huge favor by taking over. The house will be full of life again, instead of just you rattling around alone in it. My brother James, of course, he had gone along with this. He had always let Sarah take the lead, even when it meant trampling over his own sister. I'll be home next week, I said firmly, and I expect. Next week, Sarah cut me off with a scoff. But we're already settled in. The kids are in school. I joined the neighborhood association. You can't seriously expect us to leave now. Besides, wouldn't you rather be somewhere cozy? An apartment, maybe, where you don't have to worry about a peep. I ended the call, my hand trembling as I set the phone down. Through the hospital window, the city skyline stretched out before me, the same view my mother had looked at during her own battle with cancer. But unlike her, I wasn't going to let this disease take everything from me. What Sarah didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had been preparing for this moment from the day of my diagnosis. Maybe it was paranoia, or maybe it was just knowing my sister-in-law's penchant for opportunism, but I had ensured my home was legally untouchable. My phone buzzed again. A message from my neighbor, Mrs. Anderson. They're throwing out boxes from your garage. Should I call the police? I exhaled slowly, a small smile curling my lips. No need, I replied. Just keep taking pictures of everything they remove. Thank you for being my eyes. Mrs. Anderson, a retired legal secretary with a razor-sharp mind and an even sharper tongue, had been my mother's closest friend. When I had told her about my diagnosis, she had immediately offered to keep watch over the house. She had been documenting Sarah's slow takeover for weeks. Another text came through, this time from my lawyer, Michael. Everything is ready whenever you want to proceed. How are you feeling? Like teaching my sister-in-law a lesson about karma, I tagged back. I leaned against my pillows, imagining the look on Sarah's face when she realized the trap she had walked into. She thought she was taking advantage of my weakness, but she had unwittingly handed me all the evidence I needed. The next morning, an unexpected visitor appeared. James stood in my hospital doorway, shifting uneasily, his expression uncertain. He started, then stopped, taking in the sight of me. The chemo had stolen my hair, but it hadn't stolen my resolve. I sat up straighter, meeting his gaze head-on. Sarah says you're making things difficult about the house, he muttered. She's just trying to help. Is that what she told you? My voice was quiet but firm. That moving into my house without permission, throwing out Mom's paintings and telling me I should live in an apartment is helping. He shifted uncomfortably. You know how she is. She gets carried away. But she means well. Does she? I reached for my phone and pulled up the photos Mrs. Anderson had sent. Does this look like someone who means well? I showed him the images. Sarah tossing my mother's paintings into a trash pile, her friends carrying out my furniture, Sarah posing triumphantly in front of my house with a new home sign. James paled. I didn't know. You never do, I said softly. You never want to see her for who she really is. But this time, James, your wife has gone too far. He sank into the chair beside my bed, rubbing his face. What are you going to do? I thought of the legal documents waiting to be filed, the security footage, the meticulous records Mrs. Anderson had kept. The net was already tightening around Sarah, and she didn't even know it. I'm going to show her what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness, I said. The question is, whose side are you on? James hesitated, then finally met my gaze, seeing not his sickly little sister, but the woman who had inherited our mother's steel spine. What do you need me to do? He asked. I sent a quick message to Michael, the final piece locking into place. Just watch, I told James, and maybe for once stand with your family instead of enabling her games. As he left, I caught my reflection in the window. I might have looked fragile, but inside, I had never been stronger. Sarah thought she had won. She had no idea that next week she was in for the homecoming of a lifetime. The day I was discharged from a hospital, Mrs. Anderson sent me a video that ignited a fury deep in my bones. Sarah stood in my mother's art studio, now desecrated into what she smugly called her meditation space. Mom's hand-painted murals were buried beneath tacky motivational posters, the kind that peddled empty platitudes. And this is where I'll be teaching my wellness classes. Sarah's voice trilled, undoubtedly filming for her social media. Sometimes the universe just knows what you need, and this house was meant to be mine. I watched the clip 3 times during the taxi ride home, each replay tightening the knot of resolve in my chest. When we pulled up, my eyes locked onto Sarah's overpriced SUV, parked right where my mother's beloved rose garden used to be. The flowers she had tended for 20 years had been ripped out, replaced with soulless artificial turf. Need help, dear? Mrs. Anderson called from her porch, already heading my way. She took my small bag while I steadied myself with my cane, the lingering weakness from chemo making my steps deliberate but unwavering. She's throwing a housewarming party today, Mrs. Anderson murmured as we approached the door. Invited the whole neighborhood. Didn't expect you home so soon. Perfect. I didn't knock. It was, after all, my house. Laughter and a clinking of glasses spilled from the living room. Sarah stood at the center, holding court among a cluster of equally vapid guests. Emma, her voice pitched high in surprise, her smile faltering for a split second before snapping back into place. We weren't expecting you. Should you really be out of the hospital? The room fell silent, all eyes turning toward me, my frail frame, my cane, the headscarf covering my scalp. The pity in their stares was exactly what Sarah had banked on. Well, I couldn't possibly miss your housewarming party, I said sweetly, especially since you're warming my house. A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. Clearly, Sarah had spun a very different version of events. Oh, Emma, you're confused, she cooed, stepping forward with exaggerated concern. We talked about this. James and I are taking care of the house while you focus on getting better, remember? Actually, I said, raising my voice so there was no mistaking my words, I remember quite clearly that you moved in without permission while I was having chemotherapy. Just like I remember you throwing away my mother's paintings. More shifting. Guests inching toward the door. That's not. I would never, Sarah sputtered, her face flushing. James, tell her. My brother stood by the fireplace, his moment of reckoning staring him in the face. No, Sarah. His voice was quiet but firm. You're the one who needs to listen. Sarah's expression twisted in rage. What is wrong with all of you? I'm trying to help. Emma can't possibly manage this house in her condition. I'm doing her a favor. A favor? I pulled out my phone and hit play. Sarah's own voice filled the room. Once Emma's gone, this place will finally have a real family in it again. She never appreciated it anyway. The last of Sarah's friends grabbed their purses and practically fled. You've been recording me? Sarah shrieked. That's illegal. Not in your own home, Mrs. Anderson said coolly. And this is Emma's home, as the property records clearly show. Not for long. Sarah snapped. We've already started the paperwork to transfer the deed. Haven't we, James? James looked at his feet. No, Sarah. We haven't. And we won't. Sarah's face went from red to purple. What do you mean, no? We talked about this. Emma needs to be in a facility where she can get proper care. This house is wasted on her. Mrs. Harrison, I called out. My mother's old lawyer stepped in from the front porch, briefcase in hand. Perfect timing. No. Sarah shrieked, panic rising in her voice. You can't make us leave. We have rights. Mrs. Harrison opened her briefcase. Actually, he don't. I have here documentation of your illegal occupancy, destruction of property, and attempted theft. You have exactly 1 hour to collect your personal belongings before the police arrive to escort you out. Sarah turned to James, eyes brimming with desperate tears. You're going to let them do this to us? To your own family? My family? James' voice held an edge I hadn't heard in years. Emma is my family. Mom was my family. And I've let you disrespect them both for far too long. I watched as Sarah's carefully curated world collapsed. All the power she thought she wielded, the control she'd had tried to exert over my life, it was slipping through her fingers. 1 hour. I reminded her. And Sarah, those paintings you threw away, they were appraised at over $50,000 each. You'll be hearing from my lawyer about that too. Sarah stormed upstairs, still shrieking her protests. James hesitated, then turned back to me. I'm so sorry, he started. I know. I sank onto Mom's favorite armchair, one of the few things Sarah hadn't managed to discard. But sorry isn't enough this time, James. You need to decide what kind of person you want to be. He nodded, understanding the weight of my words. This wasn't just about the house. It was about years of silence, of enabling, of choosing Sarah over his real family. I'll help her pack, he said finally. And then, maybe we can talk? Really talk. I nodded, watching him go. Mrs. Anderson sat beside me and took my hand. Your mother would be so proud, she murmured. You handled that exactly as she would have. I squeezed her hand, thinking of Mom. Her strength, her unwavering love, her refusal to let anyone trample over what she built. Sarah thought cancer made me weak, I said. She didn't realize it made me stronger than ever. Above us, Sarah's voice raged on. But it didn't matter. I was home, and I was here to stay. The next step would be reclaiming my space, erasing every trace of Sarah's intrusion. But first, I had a family to rebuild, starting with my brother, if he was finally ready to be the man I knew he could be. The first step was getting my home back, undoing everything Sarah had tried to erase. But before that, I had to rebuild my family, starting with my brother James, if he was finally ready to be the person I knew he could be. 3 months after Sarah left, my house finally felt like home again. The walls, once covered with her corny quotes, now displayed my mother's beautiful paintings. Each one told a story of strength, just like my own. James started visiting every Sunday, this time without Sarah. At first, our conversations were awkward, full of silences. But slowly, we started fixing what Sarah had tried to break. One afternoon, James brought me something special. I found this in my attic, he said, handing me a familiar package. It was Mom's old sketchbook, filled with drawings of the garden she had loved. I thought Sarah threw this away, I whispered, running my fingers over the pages. I saved it, he admitted. It was the one time I stood up to her. I just couldn't let it go. My last chemo session was 2 weeks ago, and my doctor was hopeful. My hair was growing back, soft and fuzzy. James teased me, calling it my baby bird look. But more than that, my strength was returning. Not just physically, but emotionally too. Every morning, Mrs. Anderson helped me replant Mom's roses. We discovered that Sarah hadn't managed to kill them all. Some had survived in Mrs. Anderson's garden. She had secretly moved them the day Sarah started tearing them out. Your mother always said roses are like people, Mrs. Anderson told me. The strongest ones survive the hardest winters and bloom even brighter. Even the neighborhood had changed. The people who once believed Sarah's lies now came to apologize. Some brought plants from their gardens to help restore mine. Then last week, I got a letter from Sarah's lawyer. She wanted me to pay her for the improvements she made to my house. I couldn't help but laugh. She really doesn't give up, does she? James sighed when I showed him. No, I said, but neither do I. My lawyer sent back a list of all the damage Sarah had done, including the cost of my mother's paintings she had thrown away. We never heard from her again. Meanwhile, my mother's old art studio had become my safe place. I had even started painting, not as well as Mom, but with the same spirit. It felt like she was still here, guiding me. James now brought his kids over, something Sarah had never allowed. They loved hearing stories about their grandmother and helping in the garden. One day, my niece asked, Aunt Emma, why did Mom hate this place so much? James looked uncomfortable, but I answered, sometimes people hate what they don't understand. Your mom didn't see that a house is more than just walls. It's memories, love, and family history. Then something unexpected happened. Sarah had scammed people into paying for wellness classes in my house. When they showed up, expecting lessons, I invited them in for tea instead. We had no idea, one woman said. Sarah told us she inherited this house. Now, every Wednesday, they came not for wellness classes, but for art therapy. We painted, gardened, and healed together. Mom would have loved it. James finally decided to divorce Sarah. Trying to steal my house had been the last straw. It wouldn't be easy. Sarah was threatening to take everything, but he was standing his ground. You taught me that, he told me one day over coffee. Watching you fight back, not with anger but with dignity, it showed me what real strength looks like. Then yesterday, I finally felt ready to open the box of Mom's things that Sarah had thrown in the garage. Inside, I found a letter from Mom, written during her own cancer battle. My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, life has thrown you a challenge that feels impossible. But remember, our family doesn't break, we bend. We grow stronger in the broken places. This house is your sanctuary, your strength, your heritage. Don't let anyone take that from you. Looking around at the restored paintings, the blooming garden, and the family photos back in place, I knew Mom would be proud. Sarah had tried to erase us, but instead she made our roots grow deeper. The doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Anderson with cookies. Outside, new roses bloomed where Sarah's fake grass used to be. Life always finds a way to grow, even after the worst storms. This house isn't just a building. It's proof of survival, of family, of the strength we find when we refuse to be torn down. Sarah thought my illness made me weak, but it only showed me how strong I truly am. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back, it's thriving despite those who tried to break you. The garden blooms, the art flows, and love fills this house again. That's a victory Sarah will never take away.